Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Commissioner. Morning, Counselor.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning. How is everybody today?
Sun shining.
I know.
Beautiful day.
You can put your boat away.
Morning, Ken.
Mary, my plant is loving this light. So,
I'm very encouraged.
yes, I am too. Thank you for your horticultural assistance.
What kind of plant do you have?
To be honest, I don't even know. It's one my wife gave me, and I tried to salvage it, and so far I seem to be succeeding. I talked to it. I'm watering it, but not too much. I don't know, Mary. Did you happen to know what kind of plant it is? I thought you said you had recognized it.
Yes, but don't ask Chair Burschauer to do any plant care, because we know how that turns out. Not real good with like every 6 months water the plant.
Hey, I came from Arizona. We have cactus. They barely need water.
Yeah, see, my problem was the opposite. I always thought like it needed more water, and then I think the poor plant was drowning. But now it seems to be doing okay, and it's really enjoying the sunshine.
It's a coleus.
Coleus. Okay.
Okay. Well, on
I
that
was about
note,
to say, I rarely grow plants that you don't eat, but we all know that's not totally true.
you can try to eat it, Christian. It might not turn out so well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to hurt it. You're gonna just let it continue to thrive. Hopefully.
Okay. Well, it's 10:01, so I'm going to call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for March 3rd, 2022. And Commissioner Sterrett, would you lead us in the flag salute, please? Well, either my audio is not working or maybe Commissioner Sterrett wasn't on.
As I was halfway through the pledge, I realized I hadn't unmuted, and I thought it would probably be a better idea to just keep going.
Okay. We rolled with it. All right, so that brings us to our calendar session. I have a couple things on my list. The Gospel Mission Dinner is this Saturday, March 5th. I think it starts at 6 o'clock, so we might have more than one of us there. And then we received notification about the CTEC naming ceremony. That is March 14th at 3 o'clock out in Sheridan. Commissioners, do you have anything to add to the joint calendar?
Chair, I'm going to be attending the Marion County State of the County that SEDCOR is hosting on Wednesday at noon. So if anybody's going to that, just in case, maybe put on the schedule.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought that was last Wednesday or yesterday. Maybe I read the date wrong.
I have it on the 9th on my calendar.
Okay, I'll double check that. Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett? Anything for calendar?
No, Chair, just the Gospel Mission dinner on Saturday.
Great. Ken, anything to add? No? Okay. Thank you. Item D is public comment. We did receive a little bit of public comment. Thank you for providing that. And that brings us to item E, which is a department update from our county clerk, Brian Van Bergen. Looks like he's joining us here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Good. Other than busy, this is a mail day, I believe, for you.
It is. Yeah.
All right. Well, take it away. Whoops.
Very good. So,
okay.
Did you all have any questions of me that you would like to hear answered by the time I'm done?
Sorry, my audio isn't quite. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay.
And I see
Okay.
that Commissioner Sterrett has a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Brian. And I want to thank you for being so responsive for the emails that I sent asking about basically voter integrity questions and how we can shore that up and ascertain that. I know a lot of constituents are having concerns about it. And while I have all the confidence in the world and the staff and you over there, I think what really the larger discussion is how do we assure integrity at the county level when there might be concerns at the state level or some of the practices in place in terms of motor voter or extending the deadline, postmarks and mail-in ballots in general. So just sort of the overall, how do we ascertain we've got voter integrity at the county level?
Yes. And then I would add to that, how are you doing with the process of implementing the redistricting? How's that going? Because I know you kind of have to reset everything. So an update on that would be great too.
Very good. See if I can hit all those points before I'm done. Okay. See if I can share the correct screen. Apologize while I try to select the right buttons here.
Clerk, you're doing great. And we've all learned that we have to be patient. So you don't have to narrate if you don't want to.
You guys, well, while I'm struggling, do y'all happen to remember the little clicky button to click in Zoom to share a screen?
Let's see.
It should be down on the bottom toolbar, Brian. When you hover over the meeting, you should see where raise hand, share screen. There should be a green button that says share screen.
Beautiful, beautiful. You guys seeing our beautiful building?
Yes, we see.
Wonderful. Okay. So we'll try to get through a couple of routine questions and updates, and then we'll try to hit some of those questions that you guys had specifically about election integrity and what we're up to and what we can do to assure integrity through all of the trials and tribulations, and hit on redistricting before we're done. So Yamhill County Clerk, let's talk a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, and what's happening in our office. One thing I'd like to remind folks is the Yamhill County Clerk is, like most clerks in Oregon, not really a single human, but a group of people, a team of talented people are here in our building doing what they do best. And that includes being the official records keeper for the county. And for most people, most of the citizens of the county, that means that we're the place that you record your deeds, mortgages, and liens and plats and things. What that also means for our veterans is we're also the place to come locally to record their discharge documents, where they can come get a certified copy of that later on, and their spouses can too. It's one of the few documents in our building that is a closed record, where only a select group of people can actually gain access to those. Everything else is public record, and folks can come in, walk on off the street and get copies of any of the deeds, mortgages, and liens we have, but only a select group of people can get copies of the discharge documents. Now, the recording is one of the things that we do day in and day out, and one of the reasons that we're here. And those that are wondering how we're faring this year over last, we're actually down about 15%. The documents that we were recording so far this year, fiscal and calendar year. A couple things that impact that are the interest rates and how quickly homes are selling, and whether or not the interest rates are up or down. And as y'all probably know, the interest rates have been rolling up, and other factors. So refis are down also. But the good news is we're still up almost 30% over what we had been 2 years ago. So even though this particular year is down over the last couple of years have been remarkably strong for recordings in our office. So it looks bad when you just look at year over year, but looks actually pretty healthy on the long term. One thing that I'd like to remind folks when they come into record a document is the sticker shock that they get when they try to file a document. That first page is now costing citizens $81 to record a single document. And that doesn't matter if you're recording a reconveyance, a lien, a deed, or even a death certificate. So that document is costing them $81 to record. Our fee has not changed in over 30 years. Our recording fee is still $5 and has been for decades. The other components are fees and taxes that we are required to add on top of that. That jumped considerably back in 2018 with an additional $40 in the affordable housing tax. And to put that in perspective, of the 20,000 documents that were recorded last year, we collected $1.5 million in affordable housing taxes just from those recording fees. So the county clerk's office is one of the largest tax assessment entities in the county. We disperse that large sum for the housing fee, but we also send money that makes its way to the assessor's office. Some makes their way to the surveyor's office. So it's lots of little taxes and fees that go into that $81. E-recording is one of the things that we migrated to over the last few years. It helps people get their documents recorded quickly and saves a lot of tax, or not tax, but it saves people money in many different ways. And it also helps people get through a global pandemic because you don't have to physically come into our office. And as of now, we are over 70% of the documents that we record that we never see a physical document of. We're actually 70% of our recordings are now coming electronically. And that was aided last year by the passage of House Bill 2425, which allows for digital or electronic signatures to be a legitimate form of signing a document now. BOPTA is one of the things that is our office's responsibility. We are, in essence, the administrator of the program that puts a citizen panel in front of property owners and the assessment and taxation office when there is a disagreement of the value of the property. And in Oregon, if you're, say, from Arizona and you're not quite sure how property taxes play into things, the value of your home in Oregon plays a big part in the property taxes that you pay, and that is why this process exists. So if a property owner gets their property tax statement in the fall and they disagree with the value of the property, they then file and come before our board, that is a volunteer board of their peers, and that property owner gets to say, here's why my property is only worth $10 and the assessment and taxation office says it's worth $1,000. So that is the process. I thought that we would see an increase in property tax appeals this year because of all of the things that have been going on, but really they fell again. So we're down to just 12 filed this year, 32 last year, and 60 the year before that. So it's on a downward trend, but the value of properties across the county have been soaring the last few years. So that's part and parcel of what's happening there. So the other thing that we do in our office is passports. We are the only option for Yamhill County citizens where they can get their passport processed locally Monday through Friday, even through the lunch hour. A couple of other options locally. The Dundee Post Office has been a good resource for folks, but they're appointment only and they're limited timeframes. We did stop taking passports at the onset of the COVID and all that, but we started back up again gradually. Last summer, we went back full force doing passport applications. We're back and actually stronger than ever, doing on average 7 a day or about 2,000 passport applications a year. The one thing that we're not doing at the moment is taking passport photos. Our physical space, we used to bring people back into our office, and that's just not something that we wanted to start back up just yet. So some of our local retailers are doing a good job. The passport photos are being taken at Walmart and Rite Aid and Walgreens. So those are options for our citizens at the moment. One of the things, like y'all mentioned earlier on, is our office's responsibility to conduct elections. Any election that happens in Yamhill County, large or small, actually comes through our office. Some people don't realize that, but those ballots are generated from our office. They go to our voters, they come back to us, and they stay here. So that is a sneak peek into one of those answers that Commissioner Sterrett was asking about. The tail end of the elections conversation is I'm always on the lookout for more election board workers. So we need people to help pick up ballots. We need skilled folks that are able to compare signatures on those return ballot envelopes and our voter registration cards. We need folks that are able to open those ballot packets when they come back and what we call adjudicate the voter intent on the physical ballot. So those are all things that humans must do. And even through a global pandemic, humans have to touch those things and they have to be in close proximity to each other. And we do all those things in teams of at least 2 people from different political parties. So that's one of those things where we're always looking for people that can do those things while getting along with other people. So it's a challenge to find those folks that are both willing and able to get along well with others. Speaking of elections, we had budgeted this fiscal year, 2021, 2022, to have one election. We had planned on having the May 2022 primary that's coming up in a few weeks. And lo and behold, we ended up with a couple more. So we ended up with, so far, 4 elections this year. We ended up with the November special election. If you all don't remember, that was the Tuolumne Valley Fire and Rescue in the city of Dayton. So roughly about 1/3 of our voters involved with that one. The January recall election, also about 1/3 of our voters. The March recall is countywide. So that is going to be nearly as large, if not larger, than the primary. Super hard to predict how people will interact with any given election. But we're anticipating roughly the same amount of voters will be participating in both. Yes, Commissioner
Commissioner, sorry about that. Commissioner Sterrett has her hand up.
Sorry about that, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Can you address the cost to the county in as far as those recalls go in dollars and in staff time and pressure on your staff?
I certainly can. Roughly, I am in the process of accumulating the costs for the January recall as we speak. Should have those numbers here in a day or two completely finalized and ready to bill the Newburgh School District. So the way that functions globally is our office is on the hook to conduct all of those costs or to absorb all of those costs. And then depending on the election style, those costs can be divvied up when an election is all inclusive toward one contest, like the recalls in Newburgh. Most of the costs that we incur can be passed on and billed to the Newburgh School District. Unfortunately for our office, the Secretary of State's office has a matrix of what is and is not billable to any jurisdiction. One of the silly things that is not billable is any regular staff time. And y'all know that if I work for an hour or if I work for 24 hours in a day, you pay me the same amount. So I don't quantify any of my time. I don't try to analyze how many hours I spend on any one thing. So that is next to impossible to answer that question of how much time I spend on any particular thing. What we can do is charge for overtime. So all the overtime that our staff incurred on those things will be part of those. So that's a long way to answer the Newburgh recall is likely going to be about $60,000. The countywide recall is likely going to be $60,000 to $80,000. The Newburgh School District will reimburse us for a majority of the January recall. County general funds will reimburse the clerk's office for the countywide recall. The one MAC last November, the Twilight Valley Fire and Rescue in the city of Dayton, those were divvied up percentages based on the number of voters in each. So that's how all of that happens. Super hard to quantify the number of hours that we spend answering questions and building up all of the items to assist and administer all of those different things, but it is excessive. I'll have to answer that in more detail later.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. Yep. The role of our office is to assist both candidates and voters with all of those questions. Whether we try to answer those questions from local voters first, but we also have people calling us, emailing us from jurisdictions around us and in other states. So we've had lots of communications with folks in and around Yamhill County, even more from folks in other counties and other states. That is not only true for those recalls, but it's also true for the governor's contest coming up. We've had some interactions with some of the candidates. So lo and behold, some of the gubernatorial candidates are from Yamhill County. So that has added some spice to the mix.
Neither of them is running anymore, though, just so you know, Clerk.
Of the three that had been, one is so yeah, lots of moving parts in this primary. So we do try to manage the whole process that we can here in the county. One of the things we implemented a couple of years ago is bringing some lean techniques from the manufacturing sector to processing elections. So that has helped us out quite a bit in streamlining what we do and how we do it. We also try to work with any civic groups that are willing to bring us in to help educate and train more people. We've visited the Lions, the Rotary, Kiwanis, some student groups, and we try to get out there as much as we can to help educate people as often as we can. One of the things we did back in 2019 was upgraded our vote tally system, which helped us quite a bit in streamlining what we do and how we do it. And we made an improvement to that system in 2020, just in time for the presidential, and we've reaped some of the rewards of that since. Also, some of you have noticed that we do marriage licenses and perform some marriages here in our office. Throughout the pandemic, the last 2 years, many of those ceremonies have not actually been in our office, but on our back porch or out in the yard or in y'all's yard, which has been very nice to have very nice, well-kept green grass that's big enough for 20, 30 people to congregate. So thank you very much for letting us borrow that. Typically, we do about 620 marriage licenses a year. This year, we're actually on track for several more than that. We'll likely hit 660. About 80 of those pay an extra fee for a 3-day waiver so they can get married over the weekend. Some of our marriage customers are actually from out of the area coming to wine country. So they come get their license, pay the waiver, go get married and go back home again. We're actually on track for over 100 of those this year. We typically do 85 ceremonies in or around our building. We're on track to do over 100 this year. We did over 110 last year. We do business licenses in our office, and as a component or add-on to our recording of discharge documents, we have a unique veteran ID program here in Yamhill County, and we now have 590 Yamhill County veterans participating in that program and 73 merchants. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, I can tell you more about that later. We've tackled a number of significant issues over the last couple of years. In the most contentious presidential election in our history, we processed more ballots than we ever have before. We processed 59,000 503 ballots in that one election, which is almost 10,000 more voters than we had just 10 years ago. So we've 70,000 voters now compared to 60,000. Lots of things changed. And this election that we did, the 2020, we did it quicker than we ever have processed any other presidential before. We had fewer staff members available to work in our building, yet we did all of that with greater accuracy. Post-election, we actually had 6 separate rounds of audits that confirmed those numbers. Included with that is the greater transparency that we've offered. We've included or almost tripled the number of video surveillance cameras that we have in and around our building. We've posted more documents online, kept more data online. We've done a great deal to try to satiate all those questions that have been coming ever since. And as recently as yesterday, we continue to get more public records requests from that election from 2 years ago. We did all that, mind you, by keeping our staff safe, and all those humans that we had in our building, no one contracted COVID in our building or any of our Dropbox closers. And we counted that a significant success. And we've replicated that since. We've kept those same protocols in each election since. And we've been doing what I consider yeoman's work. And that's, I should remind you, that is not a single person. That is a group of people in the clerk's office doing great work together. And if you'll remember, other than this silly little global pandemic, we had wildfires, we had all sorts of things happening around a couple of those elections. And one of the things that we attempted to do is share as much information as we could. Our office published well over 100 unique social media posts over the last 24 months that hit on specific issues each time, trying to share information that was relevant, timely, and helpful to voters that were experiencing the wildfires, or they're in Arizona trying to get a ballot, or whatever that the case may be. We've tried to be very forthcoming, trying to share as much information as we can and trying to correct all the mis and disinformation that kept coming our way. We attended community forums and participated in a plethora of media interviews. Super hard to share all of those. I tried to capture a snippet, and the funny little teeny tiny type that you see on the screen is just about a 6-month list in 2020. I couldn't get 2021 on there, but those are links to some of the media reports that we were connected with, either newspaper articles that we interviewed with, or local TV stations. We were on KPTV, KGW, KTU, Coin, and the AP, a couple of outside interests also. So we tried very hard to get our messaging out to as many people as possible. We did some really simple things that may not seem like much, but added up to a lot of savings and time and money, considering the volume of work that we had to do and how few humans we could spread through our building. We replaced the expanded metal that we had in our ramp and replaced it with a lower profile, allowing us to move more product smoother, quicker, and using seasoned individuals that didn't have the capacity to carry 70 pounds. So we used some carts and trucks to move product back and forth. In the spare space that we used to have a generator downstairs, we removed walls, put carpeting in, and now use as archive space for our ballots. So trying to use the space that we have as wisely as we can. We've got a couple of challenges yet still in our building. So the power in our building was originally supposed to be connected to our generator. Not all of those pieces still are. We have some improvements to go along that line. We also have super old school film viewers in our lobby that we are required to have some method to show any citizen coming in our building a document, whether it was recorded in 1890 or 1990. So one of the most significant things that we've been doing the last couple of years is making a modern alternative to that. And at this moment, we have a digital replication of all of our film documents available in our lobby right now. And we are in the process of migrating all of that into a searchable database. So it's about halfway there. We're looking forward to some improvements in the coming years. Got a couple of improvements happening on the elections front. One thing that folks are slowly learning is that Ballot Tracks is their friend. It is a service that our office provides free to any voter, and it's a voter's prerogative whether or not they join in or not. And when they do, they gain access of their choice of an email, a text message, or a phone call from our office letting them know that their ballot has been accepted, or if there's a problem with our ballot. Right now we have 9,388 of our voters registered of our 74,000 voters. And if they were to log on right now, they would see where their ballot is in the process. So we have some statistical analysis of who those people are that are signed up. If you're interested, we can chat about that a little bit more. One of the other things that we've been doing for the last couple of years since the return to Hart's Verity system is we now have the ability to do robust risk limiting audits, and we've been doing that with every election since. In addition to what is required by the state, we take this extra step to make sure that each of our elections are conducted properly and accurately. We made a number of physical changes in our space through the COVID situation, still working through that, doing a number of upgrades as things change back to normal. One of the more significant things that we did last year, in my mind, was upgrading and securing all of our drop boxes. So we have now removed all of our older style, less secure ballot drop boxes that resembled the old mailboxes. They are now all larger, more secure, very stable drop boxes. And we replaced and upgraded about a dozen of our boxes last year and added some new ones. So now we have a new box in front of our building and one at the McMinnville Library. So we're doing all sorts of things to try to make elections better, safer, more secure, and trying to process things a little bit in a way that all voters know what's happening. And one of the things that we tried to do through this is keep our election board workers safe and healthy. So we developed, built, created a UV sterilizer for our envelopes, our inbound envelopes. So we pulled each of our inbound ballot envelopes under UV lamps, and we developed this process to flip the envelopes over so both sides of each envelope was held under a lamp for a few seconds to sterilize all those little guys and get those safe and sound for everyone. So that was the prepared bit. So some of the things that we've been doing to keep our elections full of integrity and still accessible to everyone. A motor voter is still a lingering question and a changing question. That's one of the questions that Commissioner Sterrett had first off. And one of the big changes that happened was not truly related to elections, not truly related to motor voter at its heart, but that was the change at the DMV from having a single option for your driver's license to having a regular driver's license and a Real ID compliant driver's license. And when you go to the DMV today and you tell the clerk at the DMV that you want the traditional card, you are no longer asked if you are a citizen. So that's the cheaper route. So if you're getting an updated driver's license, that's certainly the cheaper route for folks. If you want to use your Oregon driver's license to fly on an airplane, however, you need to get the Real ID compliant. So those are the only individuals now being asked if they are a citizen. So there are now 2 buckets of data at the DMV, and only that bucket where the citizen has confirmed that they are a citizen is coming to us through the motor voter process. So anyone else at the DMV that doesn't go through that is now pushed back through more of a paper-based system where they are registering old school and coming to us that way. So that funny little change at the DMV has impacted how we receive information through the DMV's process into ours, and has shifted how many we're getting in which bucket. So it used to be that we were getting 14 on average a day. Now we're getting about 7, and the other 7 are coming the other old school way. So it's a slight difference in how we're getting that data. All that to say, a lot of people still don't understand how the motor voter process works, what they are doing at the DMV and how that transfers to elections, and what they're choosing at the DMV and what we see on the other end. One of the accusations from 2 years ago is that somehow through that process, people's registration in a political party was changing. In every case that we have investigated, that has not been the case. We have found documentation for each person that has come to our office asking for clarification that their registration did not change through that process. But there still are lots of issues that need to be resolved. And I implore our friends at the Secretary of State's office to fix some of those issues before they start adding other state agencies to the mix. And that is their goal. The Secretary of State's office for many years has been trying to gain access to Oregon Department of Revenue data and some other state agencies to add more updated information for growing our percentage of registered voters. We're statewide a little over 90% now of qualified individuals that could be registered, that are registered. So if you compare Oregon to any other state, we are miles ahead of most states in the union of folks that could be registered compared to those that are registered. Lots of improvements to go though. Postmark issue, a super challenging one. Commissioner Sterritt asked how we are handling the postmark issue and how that will impact things moving forward. One of the largest guessing games about the postmark issue is not knowing from election day until 7 days after that how many more ballots might be coming our way that could be included in the total vote totals. And there is no way, as long as the state law still says that those ballots that come within a week after the election day could be included, we will have no way of knowing how many of those, they're going to be 3 or 3,000. It's just impossible to know. So as long as that law is in place, all Oregonians need to realize that on election day, we will have a number of how many ballots are in our buildings across the state, but we will have no idea how many other ballots will be coming our way after. So it's one of those changes that Oregon voters will need to become accustomed to. And it is super healthy for everyone to know exactly what those are, and that they're not coming from a closet, they're not coming from someone's car, they're coming from and through the mail, and those are the only ones that can be. And one of the things that we've been trying, like Commissioner Sterritt was mentioning, we've together answered many questions over the last 2 years about what does it mean, what does it do in other states, and what does this impact that, and one of the things that we need to do is be very accurate in how we share that information, because slight changes in how we define things really impact someone's understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. And we've tried to be very transparent with all of the envelopes that we've received. This first election in January was the first one in Oregon using this new law. So we tried to over communicate, which is some argue is the wrong approach, but we tried to be very clear with what was happening and what envelopes we could accept, what we couldn't accept, and how that impacted things along the way. So we plan on moving that theory forward into upcoming elections and sharing just as much as we can without giving away who voted which way, which is always a concern, because as things slow down after election day and we add updates to results, it can become quite apparent when you see who hasn't voted yet and what the results were yesterday and what the results were today, because we report by precinct. We try to walk that fine line between sharing information and yet keeping people's privacy intact as best we can. Redistricting is complete in our building. Since Yamhill County does not have its own GIS department, we had to do all of our redistricting by hand, old school. So we had to go address by address in our address library in our data and make all those corrections line by line and address by address. So it did take us quite a bit of time, and we had to complete our January election before we could start that. And we had to finish that before we could start any other election. So we had a very short period of time when we can do that. And to answer one of your questions, yes, that took a lot of time, a lot of staff time that we can't charge anyone for. So, right. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is that typical with redistricting, that every county's sort of up to, on its own in terms of implementing that?
Certainly true. The state is in charge of our voter registration system that we all use. So we all are at their mercy of what tools are available in that system and what tools can be used with that system. Most counties have their own internal GIS departments, so they were able to export the data that was there last year, complete the redistricting process in a legitimate GIS set of software applications, and then re-import that data. So if you go to Washington County, Multnomah County, Marion County, Lane County, Wasco County, all of those folks were able to do that outside of the program and then bring it back in. There's just a few of us that had to do it manually. And yes, we are all that's one of those pros and cons, is each county is wholly responsible for the work that we do, whether it's redistricting or running the election. We build our own ballots, we do our own redistricting, and how we share that information before, during, and after each of those things are wholly up to each individual county.
Thank you. And I mean, it's just a ton of work. So we appreciate you and your team so much. And I think one of the things that came since January was that first election with the new rule about postmarking. One of the things that I heard was people are assuming that as long as they get it into the mail drop box, that it'll be fine. And that's not the case. It's not the same thing as an elections drop box, right? So
super important to realize that, because if you are in Burns and you have an experience in Burns, it is completely different than if you are in North Portland. So if you are in Burns, your post office front door shuts at 3 p.m. So if you're trying to get your ballot envelope hand stamped, if you go into the counter at your post office and try to get that cancellation mark on there to confirm that the post office had it in their hands by election day, that is 5 hours before the 8 p.m. deadline. But if you were in North Portland, you could walk up to half a dozen different post offices all the way up to 8 p.m. So it is a huge difference. And what you're saying is exactly true. We need to get in people's minds that the postmark is that identifier. So if you can't just put it in your mailbox on election day and hope that it gets postmarked, because the chances are really good that you've just missed your carrier for that day and the carrier won't have it in their hands until the following day, even if you use one of the blue boxes out in the Fred Meyer parking lot. Not wise. You need to look at that sign that's on that blue box and read for yourself, when is the last moment that carrier picks up at that box. If you're taking the chance that you're getting it before that carrier is there, and that's the chance that people are taking. And that's why I really encourage people to not mail their ballot back the last week before an election. Even with the new postmark rule, I strongly encourage all of our voters to use our drop boxes after that week. So if you're within the 7 days of an election, I really encourage all of our voters to use drop boxes or come and bring it to our building. Commissioner Sterritt has a hand up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Brian. A couple of questions about that. As far as ascertaining whether or not the postmark is legit, if you will, is there special equipment? Is there a way to train staff? Have there been any issues associated with that? Because I think there are some reasonable concerns about this, the application of this and how this could play out. Thank you.
You bet. And it's a great thing. It's one of those things that each Oregon voter needs to completely understand, and they should watch the mail as it comes to their own home and see on their own mail the same kind of information that we see when we get their ballot back. Is when you look at your mail at home, you're going to see that some of your mail actually has a postmark on it, and some of that mail that has a postmark on it you can read. That is the same process that we have to go through. So when we get those voted ballots back in after election day, that's the first step that we will have to be taking, is see if a human can read that postmark. And that is different than the little stamp that you get from stamps.com or Pitney Bowes or Neopost or Quadient or whatever mail machine you're using. Doesn't matter to us what your mail machine said. We're looking for the USPS postmark. Two different things. Someone can mess around with their little mail machine and try to fool things. We don't really care about what the mail machine says. We're looking for the postmark from the post office. And like the commissioner was saying, yes, there are other tools. So the post office, when they are processing mail on a machine, most of those letters that go through the mail now get a little orange fluorescent barcode, usually on the backside of the envelope. And that is another indicator from the post office saying that is the day, that is the machine, that's the operator, and that is the shift where that piece of mail went through that particular plant and machine. So we can read that barcode and discern from that barcode when exactly it was in the mail stream. So that does help in those cases where a human can't read the postmark.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have any specifics about how many ballots were disqualified in the January election because they were postmarked late or they didn't have one on it?
Yes, I didn't bring that up with me, but I know that of the 513 ballots that we received in that time frame, roughly 100 of them didn't, but I'd have to get that pulled up to be absolutely certain.
Okay, so 100 ballots, that's a significant concern and a good reminder for us to make sure people know that it's not as simple as just tossing it in the mail on election day. So
I would not advise someone that really wants their vote counted to just toss it in the mail. Right.
Yeah.
And then, Brian, I have a follow-up on that one, which is do you have an idea of how many properly postmarked ballots came to you after that period where you're like waiting for them? Because presumably some keep trickling in.
And here we are in early March and we got one yesterday. So
yeah, I was thinking that some just it takes a while.
Unfortunately, they do. Seinfeld is the great communicator. So when Newman had the envelope from last year stuck in his yeah, it happens where we get mail back that's, you know, a month or a year after someone mailed it. It does happen. So yes, we continue to get ballots in our building weeks and months after each election. Yeah, some of them, unfortunately, were postmarked before. We actually received one that was postmarked January 10th. And if you remember, that election in January was January 18th, and we did not receive it until 2 weeks after the election. So it was early February when we received that one. Envelope was intact. All the information was there and legible. We just couldn't accept that ballot because it came in after the 7 days after the election, even though that voter had done what they were told to do, which is get it in well before the deadline. So yes, it happens both ways.
And then Chair, I have one other question, if I may. Not election related, well, not election and ballots related, but Clerk, have you ever worked with the Mid-Willamette Valley COG? You know, that's our contract GIS provider, which is where we get both planning and public works kind of knowledge on the GIS.
Exactly. And that is, I believe, who our planning department's cartographer is working with to get our precinct maps completed. So when I say that our redistricting is done, that is only partially true. The redistricting part that we need to get ballots out to the right people is complete, but the visual is not. The maps that people can hold in their hands and the layers on the county's GIS website are not yet updated. And the planning's cartographer is working with COG to get that done. And I fully expect that to be at least another month before those are complete.
All right, thanks, Clerk.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions?
No, but this is super helpful. Thank you very much.
Yes, tons
You're very
of
welcome.
great information. And my stepson is turning 18 right before the election. So he is very excited to get his ballots in anticipation of that. So yay, we have another voter.
Hooray!
Thank you, Brian.
You're
Thank
very
you,
welcome.
Brian.
And
Appreciate your work.
sorry, Ken, for going over to my 10 minutes. I didn't mean to. I tried to go quick.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks
Take
a
care.
lot.
Okay, looks like we are moving on to our work session, which we have none today. Item G is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, Chair.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item H is old business. We have none. And that takes us to item I, which is other business. Item I1 is consideration of approval of Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund grant agreement between the State of Oregon, Department of Administrative Services, and Yamhill County. Grant amount is $2,320,000 for Yamhill County to develop and implement a grant program for the construction and expansion of broadband in underserved areas of the county to serve county residents, businesses, and agencies, effective upon approval, and project to be completed by June 30th of 2024. And Ken is going to give us an update on this particular item.
Yeah, so really quickly, you may recall in previous discussions, Senator Boquist had identified some funds from the state for rural broadband projects. And so this is the grant agreement for those particular funds to help support a project. Just to provide a little more clarity to it, because when you're looking at the scope of work, you're going to see that it's still a work in progress because we don't have a specific project developed yet to where the funds may be directed to. So as part of previous discussions around the county's own direct allocation of ARPA funds, the board identified just over $1 million of our direct allocation for broadband infrastructure projects. And as part of that, we currently have an RFP that's open to find a consultant to prepare a plan. And so the intent of the concept with the project right now is we're using the just over $1 million that we have identified from our local allocation of ARPA funds to pay for a consultant to pull together a plan, and then any funds remaining, which there should be quite a bit of funds remaining out of that, would also be applied towards a grant program to fund infrastructure. It could be a single project, could be multiple projects, that's yet to be determined. And this additional funds from DOS would also go to support implementation of a grant program to support rural broadband expansion projects. So there's two bucket of funds. We have our own direct ARPA allocation that we have identified for the consultant, and then to support a grant program. And then this additional fund will also support grant programs. So hopefully we can make a pretty significant impact or investment in rural broadband here in the county.
Okay, well, it's wonderful to see this come through finally, and we thank Senator Boquist for sending us this much needed money and advocating for that. Commissioners, did you have any further questions for Commissioner Sterritt?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ken, for this. This is a lot of work because there were so many questions about how far we could go without an actual plan. So appreciate that. Again, Senator Boquist was very generous, and in all of the folks in his county, Polk County and Yamhill County were the only ones who received this allocation. So he's much appreciated for his generosity. And thanks, Ken, for working on this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Commissioner Kula?
Yeah, I just wanted to check too. Ken, you had said that since there's really different reporting standards for the money that we have set aside from our direct allocation versus the funding coming here, do you have a sense of, like, are you going to have all of our remaining funds have the same reporting? Or I know this is like a very specific detail, but you're just going to keep track of it. This money went here and has this reporting.
Yeah, each the funds, because under the Treasury guidelines, depending on the size of the jurisdiction and the amount of the allocation, there's different tiers and requirements and reporting requirements. And so what you're going to see as part of this agreement, there's a lot of reporting in this agreement because the state is subject to, they had to adopt a recovery plan, and there's different levels of reporting required that Yamhill County is not required to do because we're under a population of 250,000. So we weren't required to adopt those additional plans and report on those measurables out of that plan. So I'm going to have to track these separately because they're going to be different reporting requirements associated with each. And so I'll be making reports directly to the Treasury on the portion of funds that are the direct allocation to the county, and then I'll be doing additional reports, separate reports that are a little more, they have more volume and more data being requested for that directly to the state, and then the state will be reporting the use of those funds to the U.S. Treasury. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Commissioner Sterritt?
Thank you, Chair. Just some questions about staff time and how you are going to manage and finesse this on top of everything else. I don't think I've seen your door open for weeks, and you now have your budget officer hat on. So is there any way we can take some of that, and I know we've talked about it, money for administration and overhead, and sort of get you some relief in that regard?
I am, Commissioner, thank you. I am looking at that, looking at staffing levels, and also with the other programs that we also have going at the same time. And I don't be surprised if you see a request in next year's budget for some, I may need to do some immediate needs this current fiscal year. But I will say for this particular project and depending on, because again, we have an RFP that's open right now looking for that consultant to work on the plan and administer the grant programs. That's going to be a component that we're really hoping will assist with a lot of the administrative burden that comes with the reporting requirements for these types of grants, that consultant will be able to pull a lot of the data and compile it. So then, that will hopefully assist with balancing how to roll out these projects and take care of all the reporting and accounting that comes with the amount of funds that we have coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions?
No, I just want to note that Commissioner Sterritt was instrumental in connecting Senator Boquist and with this idea and making sure we got it. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows. Thanks for working on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sterritt, did you want to move approval of item I1?
Yes, I'll move approval of item I1.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? No, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to our, yes, Commissioner Sterritt.
Chair, may I ask for a 5-minute break before we get into our public hearing?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
will adjourn for 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like everybody's back. So I'm going to resume the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for March 3rd, 2022. And we are moving on to item J, which is public hearings. And we do have a public hearing today. So I'm going to open the hearing. And Christian, if I don't do something correctly in terms of the process, feel free to jump in. This is, I think, my first formal land use hearing. So we're just gonna jump right in, and thank you for the cheat sheet. This is very helpful.
Yeah, I'll chime in if need be, and I'm sure Ken and Lance will assist as well. And I think Jody is going to be joining us as well. So
Okay, sounds good.
you'll do great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for consideration, we have approval of docket number PAZ-04-21, approval of a comprehensive plan amendment from very low density residential to industrial, and a zone change from VLDR-2.5, very low density residential, to LI, or light industrial. The applicant is AKS Engineering and Forestry LLC, tax lot 4411-01300 and 4411-01301. Commissioners, do I have any abstentions from the board? No? Okay. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners hearing this matter? Okay. Does any commissioner need to announce and state on record any substance of ex parte contact or site visits for this particular case?
Chair, I'll just say that I received a phone call yesterday. I think time is weird, from Corey Rich, who is related to the Mises with the cemetery. And he just asked about whether there was going to be an opportunity to ask to leave the record open. So I explained the process as best I could, but I did want to note that for the record.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also received through my county email, I believe, testimony that was intended to be submitted today for this hearing. So I did forward that on, and hopefully commissioners have seen that as well. Okay. And I believe, Ken Friday, you're joining us. Are you going to read all the legal jargon?
That's correct.
Okay, take it away. Thank you.
The raise it or waive it statement. Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regard to the standards for approval, state law ORS 197.797 requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve an application. The standards will be listed by the county planner in a moment as part of the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the standards for approval. Second, the raise it or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of this hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Third, and this is directed to the applicant, under ORS 197.796, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court.
Thank you, Ken. And I believe that brings us to the staff report. And I believe we have Lance joining us.
Thank you, Chair Bershauer. Good morning, everyone. Sections 502, 702, and 1208.02 of the Yamhill County Zoning Ordinance are the approval criteria and standards. Section 904, the limited use overlay, may also be applied in this case. Comprehensive plan policies may be applicable, as well as OAR 660-12-60. The transportation planning rule. On to the staff report. The subject tract is located in the VLDR 2.5 zone, the very low density residential district. The property was found to be a committed exception to goals 3, the agricultural, and Goal 4, the forestry goal in Code Area 4.5, adopted by Exception Statement 2 on April 23rd, 1980, and was plan designated VLDR, very low density residential. The exception area is not within an unincorporated community, as that term is defined by OAR 660-22-10, sub 10. Aside from a roughed-in driveway, the parcel is undeveloped. The surrounding area is a nexus of various zoning designations and land use patterns. Neighboring parcels to the north and east are zoned for very low density residential use. These VLDR zoned lots are all dedicated to rural residential use with single family dwellings and accessory buildings commonly found on these properties. One of these VLDR zoned parcels, tax lot 4411-905, received approval for the operation of a mini storage facility as a home occupation. There are 2 light industrial parcels east of the applicant's tract, and those are tax lots 4411-1000 and 4411-1001. These parcels do not currently have land use approval for any light industrial uses. The tract to the west and north of the subject property hosts Evergreen Memorial Park, which is zoned for public assembly and institutional use and is 109 acres in size. There are 4 parcels to the south and southwest of the subject tract, and these lots are zoned for neighborhood commercial use. One of these lots is Buns Village, and land use on this property runs the gamut of uses permitted in the neighborhood commercial zone. Another one of these neighborhood commercial zone lots, tax lot 4411-2300, hosts a furniture retail business, which includes 5 structures located on the property. And the remaining 2 parcels zoned neighborhood commercial are used as a car dealership. Further to the north of the subject tract, towards the end of Northeast Lone Oak Road North, the land is zoned for exclusive farm use, and the predominant land use in this area is farming. And farm uses in the surrounding area include grass seed and hay production, hazelnut orchards, and nursery stock. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you very much, Lance. Appreciate that. And now we have the applicant's case. Looks like we have Elaine joining us. Welcome.
Good morning. Just wait for the rest of our team to join if we can.
Sounds great.
And Councillor Albrecht, you didn't get to wait until we're back in person.
I know. Soon enough, hopefully. I'm gonna make sure, there she is, Marie's on board. Okay. Good morning. For the record, my name is Elaine Albrecht. I'm a partner at Davis Strait Tremaine and permitting counsel for the applicant. With me today is our team. We've got Mike Town, representative for the applicant. We've got the AKS team with Chris Goodall, Rance Walt, and Marie Holiday. And we also have Lancaster Mobley, Daniel Stump, who's our engineering, traffic engineer. We're looking forward to presenting to you today. We appeared before the Planning Commission on December 2nd to present this proposal for a zone change on the subject property. We received unanimous approval for recommendation, or excuse me, unanimous recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission. And so that's the setting for us to be here before you today. You should have received our pre-hearing submittal from earlier this week. It addresses in more detail some of the items that we're going to be touching on today's presentations in response to the public comments that have been submitted. We've reviewed those ahead of the hearing and made sure that our presentation and that earlier submittal touched on those issues that were raised for your consideration. One thing to just point out before I hand it over to Marie for applicant's direct presentation is that today the applicant is not proposing any particular development on the property at this time. The applicant is only seeking the right to develop the property under a light industrial zoning in the future. And any future development will be required to go through subsequent county review and approval. So with that, I'll hand it over to Marie. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. As Elaine mentioned, my name is Marie Holiday with AKS Engineering, and for the record, my address is 12965 Southwest Herman Road, Suite 100, Tualatin, Oregon, 97062. And as Elaine mentioned, our application had a number of technical documents prepared into the record. The transportation engineering services were provided by Lancaster Mobley. A land use economics study was prepared by Johnson Economics, and an acoustical engineering study was provided by Acoustics. So I'll dive right into the project overview. You can see the subject site there shown in the white dash line just north of Highway 99, gaining access from Lone Oak Road and just east of the precipice of Highway 47. The site totals 13 acres and is the subject of the comp plan and zoning map amendment before you. The property has been owned by the town family since 1967, generally facilitated by the Meisel Rock product company and used for industrial activities for over 50 years, including a ready mixed concrete facility for about 30 years. As Elaine mentioned, the Planning Commission recommended a 6-0 approval with conditions, and the decision is before you this morning. To give a bit more context, the subject site is shown here on an aerial photograph, and you can see the area that surrounds the site is generally characterized by a variety of zoning designations and features many rural businesses, including winery services, a vehicle and tractor dealership, barrel maker, gas wholesaler, self-storage, furniture store, and other retail services. And to the southwest of the site across 99, you can see the Buns Village is an industrial and commercial flex business site, including auto repair, transmission shop, vehicle sales, a wine distribution facility, glass blowing, welding, and fabrication uses. And you can see that those uses are a bit closer to the cemetery to the north there, which surrounds to the west of the site. So as demonstrated, you can see that this area of the county provides services and job opportunities to residents. And here's a view of the Yamhill County zoning map. So you can see that all those uses fit into this zoning map here. The site is just east of the city of McMinnville limits, which is shown with that red border there, and just west of the city of Lafayette, just west of the city of Lafayette down the highway there. So the site is located within this viable corridor of light industrial and commercial businesses along the highway, which provide real business advantages and provide that transition from rural to urban residents, urban to rural uses. Here you can see a closer view of the site here. If it were currently developed under the zoning listed, it would provide 5 2.5 acre home sites. You can see to the right, the proposed zoning is light industrial, sited near other light industrial and commercial businesses. Those stars there represent recent zone changes that were approved by both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. At the Planning Commission hearing, again, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the application in a 6-0 vote. And according to evidence in the record, a limited use overlay district was recommended based on noise concerns and compatibility with adjacent properties. Following the Planning Commission hearing and after hearing the concerns from public testimony, the applicant engaged an expert in the field of noise to investigate. And again, that study was the acoustical noise report prepared by Acoustics, which we'll get into a little bit later. And after hearing the concerns raised specifically by the cemetery, the applicant did schedule a meeting with the cemetery to discuss possible noise mitigation measures upon a future site plan. The approval criteria are listed on page 15 of the staff report, and as discussed in the application materials, the project demonstrates consistency with the comprehensive plan goals and policies. It's compatible with the character and available services of the area, concentrates industries of similar types, and enhances a viable corridor, as you saw on the zoning map and the aerial photograph of the businesses, and provides a useful service to residents and businesses, job opportunities, local economy boost. The use also complies with the transportation planning rule as demonstrated in the documentation provided by Lancaster Mobley, and is consistent with the Yamhill County Zoning Ordinance Section 1208 as found by the Planning Commission. So why CZO 1208 generally are these uses or are these criteria listed here? Since the Planning Commission found a 6-0 approval, we would like to go ahead and discuss only one of the approval criteria, approval criteria C, which is more focused on compatibility with adjacent uses. So the criterion C is particularly relevant to the board, again, given the public comments received to date over concerns of light industrial zoning, noise, and compatibility. So this criteria is specific to the surrounding land uses, the density and pattern of development in the area, any changes which may have occurred in the vicinity to the proposed amendment. Again, you saw that the Planning Commission and the board did approve zone changes just adjacent to the site nearby. So the application does find that it's a suitable location for a variety of light industrial uses. As you saw, there's a plethora of businesses nearby. It enhances that viable corridor along the highway, and it promotes an efficient transition from rural to urban uses. Again, to combat the public comments received in the record, the applicant did reach out and prepare a study from Acoustics Engineering to determine the existing ambient sound pressure levels near the businesses in Buns Village and the Evergreen Memorial Park. Again, 2 sets of sound pressure level measurements were taken weekday and weekend at 8 locations shown on the map there on the screen. So you can see the study was taken not only on the subject property, but along the highway all the way down to west of the cemetery. And we did this study because we wanted to understand the impacts of existing noise in the area, again, due to the public comments received. So the acoustical study found that the recorded sound at most positions was dominated by highway traffic noise and light airplanes. The aerial image on the screen now shows those exact businesses in relation to the study locations. Sound pressure levels for functioning businesses near the site are well below the ambient traffic noise. The highway produces quite a bit of noise, and again, airplanes flying overhead. The study found that action is not recommended to be necessary to mitigate potential LI uses due to the existing noise levels. And before concluding our direct presentation, we wanted to share with the board of examples of other cemeteries in the area and the surrounding zoning to demonstrate it is common for development to occur around cemeteries. So here you can see the 24-acre Furlong Cemetery and 9-acre Hillsborough Pioneer Cemetery. These are both within the city of Hillsborough and are surrounded by industrial, commercial, and multifamily zoning. Again, the industrial and commercial zoning would allow businesses similar to the Buns Village, which is south of the site. Here's an image of the 18-acre Crescent Grove Cemetery located in Tigard, surrounded by mixed-use commercial and mixed-use employment lands, allowing a plethora of uses under that zoning designation. This site is also adjacent to a highway as well, similar to the subject site. Another example is the 35-acre Valley Memorial Park Cemetery in Hillsborough, and it's surrounded again by PUD commercial and residential zoning. And lastly, the 14-acre Zion Memorial Park Cemetery is located in Clackamas County and surrounded by light and heavy industrial zoning within the Canby city limits. Just south of this site, there's actually an American steel plant. So in conclusion, the applicant's impact analysis in the record addressed a range of potential uses in the light industrial zone. Sound levels were specifically analyzed to evaluate existing background conditions, and the record supports a finding that the proposed zone change is appropriate under YCZO 1208.02C, which was generally the intent of the public comments. Any future development will be subject to subsequent site design review under county code, which addresses factors such as traffic, noise, visual buffering from adjacent property owners that may be affected by the proposed use. At this time, the county could impose screening, buffering, or noise mitigation measures at that time based on the design of the proposed development. So again, this application is only seeking for approval of a zone change, not seeking approval of a specific site design. So in summary, this is a suitable location for a range of LI uses given the access and proximity to the highway and other businesses. The applicant maintains the LU overlay is unnecessary due to subsequent site design review process to analyze a specific design proposal. And amending the site to LI will support the local economy and provide jobs and services to local residents. Thank you for your consideration, and our team is available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marie. A couple of questions regarding the site design review as opposed to the approval of a zone change in terms of what those sort of the distinction between conditions imposed now in terms of, let's say, an overlay and in the site design review. How would they differ, and how would imposing them now, let's say hypothetically, impact future site design review conditions?
I can take that one. This is Elaine Albrecht for the record. Thanks for the question. Right now, the limited use overlay, and Marie, maybe if we have that slide, you could bring that up to show it. But the limited use overlay is a overlay zone that the county can use to restrict uses on a particular property when doing a zone change. So the limited use overlay is focused on what uses are restricted or prohibited that would otherwise be allowed within the light industrial zone. So it needs to specifically reference the uses within the light industrial zone of what would be allowed. That's different than site design review and the factors that the county looks at when doing site design on a particular development proposal, which looks at the actual elements of the development and how the development relates to the site as well as the adjacent properties. And so it is more of a site-specific, condition-specific analysis that's done in site design review that looks at potential impacts from traffic, access, circulation, visual impacts, screening and buffering, and it's an opportunity for members of the public and adjacent property owners to provide comments specifically on those factors. And that in and of itself is a prong in the code that requires consideration of adjacent property owner comments about compatibility. So in our position, we feel that addressing the concerns about orientation of future development and the relationship to the cemetery is more appropriately addressed during site design review, and that the analysis provided in the record shows that any range of the allowed uses in the light industrial zone could be appropriate under the zone change criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. So my understanding of my review of the Planning Commission meeting testimony is that a limited use overlay would essentially limit the property owner into developing only like an ag related business, so farm store or ag related storage. Is that kind of the?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very narrow in restricting the use within the LI zone to only one particular use, when the zone itself allows a range of 10 or so, I don't know, but a range of allowed uses.
Right. Okay. And then my understanding also was that the property owner is not sure what they want to do at this point. They're just seeking permission for something in the future.
That's right. We've shared on the record that there's a business opportunity available that the property owner is trying to pursue, but it's just an opportunity at this point and it's not certain. So we're seeking the flexibility to develop other uses if other opportunities arrive in the future.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fuller?
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in. I have a series of questions, but the first one is related to this topic of the limited use overlay. So Councilor Albrecht, if you're ready to go. Okay, so I will note that there's a requirement that that you show an economic need for the use, right? And I'll note that the economic need analysis was focused on a farm store. So if you're requesting that a general that there not really be a limited use overlay, despite what the Planning Commission has recommended, can you give us a new economic analysis that describes a need for the general category? And then I will note that most of the site analysis plans included that farm store operation. So it does seem like your application was focused on a particular use. And so it's an open-ended question for you, Councillor.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Kula. Let me take it from the back, reverse. What was proposed in the application was a concept to evaluate potential impacts from a potential site layout of what could be developed on the property, given the setbacks, the lot coverage area, the development standards under the under the light industrial zoning. So it was intended to be conceptual for purposes of being able to evaluate, impacts. That example was for a farm store or an agricultural supply outlet, but it could be any, use within that kind of structure or the development. It could be cold storage, it could be warehousing, it could be some type of food processing within that similar building layout of what would be allowed under the development standards within the light industrial zone. So it is a little bit confusing because it was conceptual and it was specific to that. So that's kind of the explanation for that. With respect to the Johnson economic analysis and looking at needs, it did touch on light industrial across the county, not just the need for this particular type of land, but it was focused on the size of parcel that would be needed for this type of operation, and it being, larger acreage, not the smaller kind of 1-2 acre parcels that are available. Good question though. It is something that if we do end up leaving the record open, there could be an opportunity for the applicant to supplement the economic analysis in order to provide a little broader evaluation of that to address that specific issue.
Okay, follow up if I may, Chair. There's two analyses that are at play, and Marie didn't really touch on either of them. There's the is there appropriate sites elsewhere, and so that would be the scale. I don't mean to correct you. I just want to get into the fact that there's an economic needs analysis in addition to a site needs analysis, and the economic needs analysis described primarily a farm store. But I'll also note that in that economic analysis, there's a statement that says that this category is the fastest growing employment sector or something like that in your county. But then if you really drill into the subject, it's actually it's not the farm store that's the fastest growing economic employment. And I just wanted to note that there is a discrepancy in the analysis, but the analysis does focus on a farm store and actually a garden supply store, which I picture as being something more like Kramer's to put a name on it rather than Wilco. And I will also note that those are very close by, as well as OBS. But if you have some thoughts on that, I'd love to just see one that's more focused on the type that you are envisioning, since that's one of the criteria, is it not?
Right, I'm just going to pull up what we're looking at. So I'm pulling up the report itself.
And then I'll have some questions about the site need analysis later.
Okay. Marie, can you pull up the slide that we have on the economic needs?
Yeah, if I might speak to Commissioner Kula's statement there. The Johnson Economic Study did provide a full analysis of light industrial zone lands in the county. And in the study, they did determine that 85% of LI zone land is already developed and only 15% of remaining LI land is available. And those sites did have unique disadvantages to them for a use similar to something that would go on the site. But again, that Johnson Economic Study did cover an LI full analysis of lands in the county.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to look for the Johnson versus the initial narrative. So Marie, hold on so that I can get something specific.
Sure.
because if I'm using the wrong language, forgive me, but there's a criteria that there's actually a need for this. I just want to note too that there's a discrepancy that, or there's an inherent what I see as a conflict in that there's the analysis of sites stays in unincorporated Yamhill County, but the analysis of need and demand for services jumps into the incorporated areas. And so that's just something if you have thoughts on how I might understand the economic versus the site, love to hear it.
Mm-hmm. So I think just so we're clear on where your question is coming from, we're looking at the review criteria 1208.02B, which says that there's an existing demonstrable need for the particular uses allowed by the requested zone, considering the importance of such uses to the citizenry or the economy of the area, the existing market demands, which such uses will satisfy, and the availability and location of other lands zoned and their suitability for the uses allowed by the zone. And so just from a geographic area, Johnson Economic thought of the existing market demand and the economy of the area as something broader than just the unincorporated. And so that's kind of the basis for why it included both unincorporated and incorporated areas, thinking like if you were a business, owner or pursuing a development opportunity, you would look at both for light industrial land. So that addresses that particular question. I don't think I'm addressing the second part. If you could repeat it.
This one is really to, well, so there was the question about the demonstrable need for this service. And it's just that your analysis is like, well, the demonstrable need is on exclusive light industrial zone lands. My observation is that there's a lot of this use on inside of the city limits, including just on the other side of the city limits or the city of McMinnville. But I'm happy to go on to the my questions, I'm happy to go on to my questions about the site needs that are out there, where you analyze other sites, if you would like.
Okay.
So what is I will say that my question is contingent upon your presentation of the farm supply store. So maybe it's irrelevant, which the question would be, what is the size of the footprint that was proposed in the drawings that you have with us?
Of the conceptual development?
Yeah.
Marie, can you answer that one? I don't know the square footage of what. I guess in going, are you asking that from the scale of the development that could be proposed? Or are you just thinking about it of what is needed for the site from a site availability?
Well, so you have a figure up right now that's LI zone area in Yamhill County. And then you've also shared with us this conceptual layout of a warehouse and parking, and then a retail store, offices and parking. And I just like to know what's the footprint of that relative to these other properties that are available.
Okay. I think I'm going to have to look that question up and get back on that. I need to double check. Okay.
And then I just asked that in the context of the as you might know, because I'm a farmer, I am fairly familiar with some of these sites and the areas around them. I recognize that the person who's applying owns this property, so of course it's the most appropriate. But I'm also at least passingly familiar with the property on 99W between Amity and McMinnville. And just looking at it, my haphazard glance, it makes it seem like it would fit. The farm supply store would fit into this, but since you're not really going to ask for a farm supply store limited use overlay, I just want to know, is it just because it's not owned by the owner? Because it sure looks like it would fit the property in 99W that's zone light industrial.
I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
But I would though point just to the market analysis that's in the Johnson Economics report included in the record. There's a section that addresses the demand for limited industrial land. It starts on page 5 of the report, and it talks about not only the lawn and garden supply, but also then other uses that are allowed in the LI zone, including the manufacturing machines, tools, medical, dental equipment. So it's the uses that are in 702, 02A, B, and C. And then if you look at figure 5 in the report, it then provides the analysis associated with the past and projected employment growth based on those 3 uses. So I hear you in the sense that the record does not reflect an analysis of every potential use within the limited or within the light industrial zone, but it was intended to provide us a survey of possible uses allowed within the light industrial zone.
And so if I may, because I know that Chair Bershauer had some comments to add, so I'll back off from my series of questions, but my only kind of follow on to that is that you're asking us to add to the light industrial inventory, which will then immediately be filled up, right? It will no longer be considered vacant, but there is vacant light industrial land that's available according to your analysis here. So I just want to note that that's the kind of position I'm coming to it from.
Okay.
And I will step back because I know that Commissioner Sarah and Commissioner Bershauer probably have additional questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So that partially answers my question, which came from your questioning. But so are you saying that the owner of this particular property also owns property elsewhere, or are you just simply trying to make the comparison that there is vacant light industrial land available?
Chair, was that directed at me?
Yes, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's okay. And I don't want to go too much into deliberation time, but I was noting that the criteria is there vacant land available that's light industrial for the purposes that this person intends to use it, and then it goes to, oh, there's not vacant land, therefore we should be able to rezone our land. And I will just note that it'll immediately not add to the vacant inventory if we change the zoning on this, because it will be considered not vacant anymore. But there is a parcel that's vacant that's 4.5 acres. It's a good sized piece of land on 99W and Amity, Whiteson area.
Okay, that clears it up. Thank you. Commissioner Sterritt, did you have any further questions?
No, mine is actually something that will be best left to deliberations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Kula, do you have follow-up questions?
I just had some other additional questions that weren't answered by the presentation by Marie.
Okay.
And so it might just be for Marie or for Councilor Albrecht, but I wanted to know, so the analysis shows that there's obviously going to be, with the proposed use, there will obviously be a great increase in traffic coming out of this site. But I didn't see anything, and maybe I just missed it, that showed the impact on Lone Oak Road or on 99W in that particular area. That and whether mostly the consequences of that impact.
Thank you. This is Elaine Albrecht for the record, and then maybe Marie or Daniel want to hop in on this. But in the record, there is a traffic report from Lancaster Mobley that addresses the transportation planning rule, which is required when seeking a zone change. It requires an analysis of the potential trips from the range of uses allowed in the in the light industrial zone. And so it's not specifically looking at the conceptual use, it's looking at everything. And so that transportation analysis demonstrated that no matter what type of allowed use went in on that property under the light industrial zoning, that it would not create a significant impact on the transportation system.
And if I might add to that, The worst case scenario in the TPR analysis was based on a building square footage of 170,000 square feet. So that was the worst case scenario. This wasn't, again, designed around a conceptual use.
Okay, that's super helpful. I heard that in Councilor Albrecht's, but as a follow-up, if I may, Chair, Lone Oak Road, then, you know, we've approved new zoning or zone changes on that may increase the traffic on Lone Oak. And I assume that the folks at, what is it, Lancaster Mobley have factored that in. And then I just wanted to, as a follow-up to the intersection with Lone Oak is very tight as it is right now with large trucks coming and going. Like we're in Public Works, we're having this conversation right now because of a gravel quarry that's starting back up and how they actually need more space. So intersection with Lone Oak and then just Lone Oak itself.
And I was going to hand that question over to Daniel from Lancaster Mobley. I know the intersections were studied, but he can provide you more detail.
Thank you. And if Daniel's joining us, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, yeah, this is Daniel with Lancaster Mobley. So I can speak more to that question. So yes, we did analyze the site, assuming a general light industrial use, a fairly large building, 170,000 square feet, I believe. And we did take in consideration growth along the roadway associated with development of properties nearby. Those are all based on projections prepared by ODOT, where we grew our volumes out about 20 years into the future. And then we analyzed conditions with assuming 170,000 square foot industrial building impacting those Lone Oak intersections. And we were able to find that both of those Lone Oak intersections, both eastbound and westbound, would operate acceptably per ODOT standards.
Thank you, Daniel. I think we missed it, but if you could state your full name and address for the record. Just so
Yeah, my apologies. Daniel Stumpf with Lancaster Mobley. My address is 321 Southwest 4th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97204.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. And I did want to clarify as a follow-up too, it's eastbound versus westbound. You just mean that everybody's going to go west and then some of them might go east, right? 99 there is one way.
Well, I was referring to those two intersections. There's the eastbound direction, which is the southern intersection along Lone Oak Road, and then the westbound, which is the northern intersection. So there's actually two separate intersections, each with just one direction travel in the eastbound direction and westbound direction.
Oh, so you're talking about in this conceptual drawing of a loop.
I might be misinterpreting your question. Are you talking about the site specific, or are you talking about the highway intersections?
Well, so I was talking about both site specific intersections on Lone Oak and then Lone Oak's intersection with 99W.
Okay, got it. Yeah, we did look at those intersections along the highway, just the eastbound and westbound directions. We didn't look specifically on site because that would come with site review itself.
Oh, so I'm sorry, but it's a one way there, right? So how are you having an eastbound out of Lone Oak?
The top intersection to on Lone Oak Road with Highway 99W, that is only westbound direction travel on that highway. And then the southern intersection to the south, that's only eastbound. And so we analyzed those two.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Thank you very much. And so you found that intersection was fine as designed?
Correct. Yeah, both of those intersections would operate acceptably per ODOT standards.
Okay, thank you for your time. And Chair, I don't think I have any further questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Looks like we can move on to testimony in favor of the application. We know if anyone is joining us for that. And I apologize if you see somebody come on, I can't see everybody, so just pipe in and let me know.
Chair, my understanding is that there is somebody from the Macy family, but they may need to raise their digital hand.
Okay.
It might be helpful for staff if the applicant could stop the share screen on the presentation at this point.
Thank you. I see a hand up from Andrew Anderson.
And Chair, could we clarify, are we right now asking for in support of the application?
Yes, correct. So this is testimony in support of the application. And Mr. Anderson, if you are joining us to provide testimony in support of the application, welcome. And if you could just state your full name and address for the record.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I am not in support of the application.
Okay, we'll get to that testimony. So thank you. Okay, is there any other testimony in support of the application? I'll check the list one more time. Okay, seeing none. We will move on to the appellant's case.
I think you meant the opponent's case.
Sorry, opponent, yes. And it looks like we have Corey Rich or Mr. Anderson. I think the name changed, but Corey Rich has his hand up.
Yeah, staff is right now, we're working on doing the transition
Okay.
To get folks.
Thank you. I appreciate the bumper lanes are handy. Thank you. Okay, so I see a Corey Rich that has joined us. Mr. Rich, if you are presenting the opponent's case, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Corey Rich. My address is 1107 Northeast Cowell Street here in McMinnville.
Great, thank you. Please proceed.
All right, well, good morning. I am the Vice President of Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery. I'm here today to advocate not only for the cemetery, but also for the 13,000 people laid to rest there, their family members, and everyone else who plans on Evergreen being their final resting place. I'm also advocating for the thousands of property owners at Evergreen and all the new property owners to come. A decision on this land use change will not only affect them, but all the future generations that follow. For a century, our family has worked to ensure that Evergreen Memorial Park will remain a peaceful and resting place, a place of quiet contemplation, a place to share memories, and a place to celebrate the lives of all those we have loved. It is truly hallowed ground. We are certain the current zoning restrictions work hand in hand with these goals. By changing the town investment property zoning from very low density residential to light industrial, not only would there be a negative visual and noise effect on the cemetery, but in addition, it would affect the overall peacefulness and relatively quiet atmosphere that all the property owners at the cemetery expect and deserve. As defined in the acoustic engineering report provided by the town project, quiet area means any land or facility designated by the commission as an appropriate area where the qualities of serenity, tranquility, and quiet are of extraordinary significance and serve an important public need. I could not write a better description or definition for our cemetery. It is also important to understand that every single grave sold at Evergreen Memorial Park is deeded to the owner of the grave. Every single owner of those graves are in turn affected by this decision. It is not just one property owner that occupies our park, but tens of thousands. And that number is only a fraction of the potential people affected. Yamhill County Zoning Ordinance 1208.02C provided that in order for a zone change to be approved, you must find that proposed change is appropriate considering the surrounding land uses, the density and pattern of development in the area. We will show you maps, pictures, and testimony as to why the proposed change is not appropriate considering the surrounding land uses of Evergreen Memorial Park. I would like to introduce my father-in-law, Steve Macy, whose grandfather started the cemetery. He is former president of Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery. If you have any questions during the following testimony, please ask.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Welcome, Mr. Macy. And if you
Thank
could,
you. Thank
if you
you.
could state
Beautiful
your,
day.
sorry
Beautiful
about that.
day. It's a beautiful day.
Yes, it is. Thank you. If you could state your full name and address for the record, we'd
My name
appreciate
is
it.
Steve Macy, and I live at 924 Southwest Fellow Street in McMinnville.
Great, thank you. Please go ahead with your testimony.
We're going to put these on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. This is a map of Evergreen Memorial Park. And if you look up on the right-hand side, you'll see the surveyor certificate. The 1974 certificate states that the approved cemetery boundaries have not changed since 1937. Below the certificate, you will see the boundaries were approved by county commissioners and other county officials as required by state law. The point is that the boundaries of Evergreen Memorial Park have not changed for 85 years. Okay. And this is a map of the town project that you've already seen. The red line is the line that's it's the same boundary with Evergreen as it is with the town project. The boundaries are right together for 1,000 feet. Okay. The next is another map. Do you have your maps and charts with you there? Do you have all? Did they bring the charts to you?
Yes, Mr. Macy, we have seen these.
Good. You
Thank
can.
you.
Good. You can pick. If you can't see well enough on the screen, you can pick those up. They're a little bigger. All right. This is a map of the cemetery and showing the east side of it, 1,000 feet, and the west side of the town project. The area that we're about to show you with the arrow is undeveloped in the cemetery, and you will see it later as a green field, but it all has been platted. Any questions there? Okay. So the next one. This is the cemetery, almost the full length of it. There's about another 2 inches on the left side as you're looking at it. Couldn't get it on the poster board. But as you can see, we're looking at a kind of a waste wall there of cement, asphalt, and dirt that was dumped on the town investment property from approximately 1980 to approximately 2000. Also note that the town investment property has been zoned very low density residential since 1980. Along the length of the red line, there are thousands of graves with a near proximity of the wall. This screen shows Evergreen Memorial Park platted cemetery in full. Here's folks at, yeah. And the red line is the line between the cemetery and the town project. This town project that's described in the investment property as a grassland, a flat grassy field. Hardly. There have been dumped tons and tons of concrete and asphalt and dirt on that property. That's why it sits so high above the cemetery property. That's created the wall on the other side. Any questions on that? I might add that during the planner's deliberation on December 2nd, 2021, someone pointed out that the Bun Village is noisy. So why should Evergreen worry about the noise from the proposed light industrial area? Because you're already getting it from Bun Village. Now that was in deliberation time, and so I was unable to ask that question. However, I'm going to now. The Buns Village has been a very good neighbor. We hear nothing from them. They're zoned neighborhood commercial, and we just haven't had a problem with it. If you go over with the arrow, Corey, you'll see the parts of Bun Village there, and they're kind of down below the highway. So they've been good neighbors. We don't have any complaints about Buns Village. Right next to there's a red circle, and that's the entrance to the cemetery. And we own that approximately 1.5, 2 acres thing. And we keep that open for to come into the cemetery, so Bun Village will not be developed anymore. Corey, show him where the on the highway there, where the noise, just go along. Just go along the road over here at the highway. Okay, where he's got going up on the highway, that's where they took measurements clear down the other end of the highway. They took measurements on the highway. And they took measurements out in here where the new cemetery that I'm describing goes. And take the X and bring it around and bring it around here. All that's going to be developed shortly. And that's the property. You'd find that the noise level from the roadway have fallen dramatically. Roadway, and you'll hear from people say that it's a quiet, peaceful place. So any questions at this time?
Mr. Macy, this is Commissioner Bershauer.
Yes,
I just wanted to clarify, did you say that your family owns the 1 to 2 acres that's directly across the street at the
I'm saying
entrance?
the cemetery does.
The cemetery owns it.
The cemetery owns that property, right?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And that restricts Buns Village from going any further. It also makes it nice for people coming to the cemetery. They can see up the highway when they go across the road.
Thank you.
And on the first page of letters that our sexton at the cemetery, Brett Nickel, also said he's never had experience with a noise impact from Buns Village. Now I'm going to read a letter from Nancy Filton, General Manager of Crescent Grove Cemetery. I'm writing to you concerning the light industrial park that you are considering building adjacent to the east side of Evergreen Memorial Park in McMinnville. My grandparents, Leonard and Marie Gillum, are buried there. They owned and operated Gillum Portrait Studios and Camera Shop for over 40 years, as well as my great-grandparents, John Edgar and Annie Darcy Putman. I have many concerns about the impact of building a light industrial park next to the cemetery. Families come to the cemetery to visit, grieve, honor, and celebrate their loved ones at a tranquil and quite quiet, peaceful setting. I urge the Yamhill County Commissioners to reject this application and keep the area around Evergreen Memorial Park a quiet, beautiful, serene place for families to pay respects to their loved ones in a peaceful and comforting environment. I'm the general manager of Crescent Grove Cemetery Association located in Tigard next to Washington Square. That was mentioned by the town report. I feel that I can speak directly to this because I have worked in the cemetery funeral industry for over 43 years and have been a general manager of Crescent Grove Cemetery for over 26 years. I have experienced and understanding the needs and expectations of families we serve. In closing, I personally do not know of any industrial zoning located next to a cemetery. She's been around a long time. Thank you for your time and consideration. We go up to the next letter. This is the Yamhill County Commissioners from Marie Henry, President of the Cemetery Association of Oregon. In regards to the zoning change proposed that directly borders Evergreen Memorial Park, the Cemetery Association of Oregon would like to state their strong stance against such an egregious act. Changing the zoning from very low density residential to light industrial will most certainly affect the peacefulness and atmosphere of the park. The mission of the Cemetery Association of Oregon is to provide, promote, and safeguard the highest standards in the industry and enhance the service provided to families and their loved ones while working towards improving the operation and regulatory practices of the cemeteries. We cannot, this is a 8-man board, I believe, we cannot think of a single county in the state who has approved a zone change to light industrial next to a cemetery. Placing a light industrial area directly next to any cemetery would have a devastating impact on the peacefulness of such an important and sacred place. We urge you not to allow such a change, thus honoring your previous commitment to the community. Marie. Now this next one is from Harold Washington. I would like to express my concern over allowing a zone change from residential to light industrial immediately adjacent to the entire east end of Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery, the entire east end. Both my parents' final resting place at Evergreen is close proximity to the proposed zone change. You see this X out here in the middle, correct? That's that area right there where he's describing. The light industrial park would have a negative impact on our family's place of reflection and those of thousands of other families. I'm against the proposed zone change. I myself have been on the board of St. James Catholic Cemetery for over 30 years, and I am currently president of the board. I would go absolutely nuts if someone was trying to place an industrial park next to St. James Cemetery. I can think of nothing more degrading to the families that have loved ones interred here. Respectfully, Harold Washington. And, you know, it's kind of, to me, it's ironic that Lloyd Town, the president of Town Enterprises, has been a member of the St. James Catholic Cemetery Board for at least 4 years. Certainly, Mr. Town would not support a light industrial development to be placed adjacent to St. James Cemetery. I would even go as far to say that he would be aghast at putting this kind of a development next to Evergreen. Any questions? This next letter is from Gary and Nancy Milhoff to the Yamhill County Planning Commission. We understand that there is a zoning change to industrial use on the property north, but it's actually northeast of Evergreen Cemetery. As property owner at Evergreen Mausoleum for future use and as a child of parents that purchased property at the mausoleum, showing the end of the mausoleum there, you see that where she is, where the arrow is right there. We choose, when my mother and I purchased the crypts at the mausoleum, we chose ones that faced the northeast for both my parents and me and my husband, and did so because of the quiet and peaceful surroundings of this location. Very close friend also purchased crypts around the corner facing north because of the peaceful surroundings. A zone change to industrial would add noise that would change the environment around the cemetery. There is no buffer around the north end to help with noise control. Please do not change the zoning of this property to industrial. This is from Pamela Howard. He's right at the end too. It has come to my attention that the Yamhill County Commissioners are considering rezoning the property by Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery as industrial. I'm writing this letter to encourage the county commissioners to reconsider. These last 3 months, I have lost a grandmother and an uncle. My mother and grandmother and grandfather and uncle are currently buried at the above mentioned cemetery. My father has a plot for when he passes as well. When I visit my family that has passed and will pass, I personally, as I'm sure others as well, do not want to listen or to look at an industrial park while I'm grieving. Evergreen Memorial Park, as it sits currently, is quiet and peaceful, unaffected by current industrial zoning on Riverside Drive. She's quite a ways. Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery is a welcoming place for people like myself to cry and grieve. Implementation of industrial zoning will potentially create an atmosphere that will not be quiet and calm, an eyesore, if you will. How many inhabitants of McMinnville and surrounding areas will choose another resting place for their family due to the encroaching activity from industrial activities? I truly appreciate your time and consideration of my letter and many others in this matter. Excuse me for a second. This letter is from Jim Hurl. The proposed light industrial park next to a long time and well thought out cemetery doesn't seem appropriate to me. It would take away the solitude that you have with your departed ones. I, as a long-time county resident, am strongly opposed to this request to rezone this parcel of land. Jim has a father there, grandparents, cousin, aunts, and uncles are buried at Evergreen. This is from Ginger Zimmerman. It was recently brought to my attention that a request for a zoning change has been submitted for the east bordering property adjacent to Evergreen Memorial Park. My husband is buried at Evergreen Memorial Park, and her family has numerous immediate as well as extended family and close friends buried at Evergreen. I visit EMP often. Even after all these years, I frequently need to stop and visit my husband, simply to talk to him and tell him we miss you, simply to have a moment of peace together, simply to listen to the stillness together. Evergreen Memorial Park is such a beautiful, peaceful place. The quiet is calming. Family and friends need the tranquility, the quiet, the peacefulness to continue at Evergreen Memorial Park. Please consider the many families that visit Evergreen Memorial Park when making your decision. This is from Ron and Susie Bamer. It's come to our attention that the owners of the property adjacent to Evergreen Cemetery are trying to get it rezoned for light industrial. We are landowners on our 3 parcels in the cemetery, as true for everyone who has a plot here. So as landowners, all should have a choice in this decision. It has been 28 years since we buried our son there. And believe me, we make a visit there year around for birthdays, holidays, and some in between. It is a place of peace, quiet, and solace, as the cemetery should be. We also see from this gravesite that there are homes around as well when they look across back of, I guess, the bomb zone over there. We believe that the zoning should be held as is for this particular piece. If anything, look at the population of the surrounding area. Maybe better use of the land would be expansion of the cemetery. I'll talk to you later, Mike. This is from Dean Claus. I find the thought of a zone change to the property adjacent to our cemetery disappointing and unsettling. My parents came here to McMinnville in 1945 and are buried there. When our only son died in 1998, he was buried a few graves over. And I bought the six adjacent plots. Each June 1 and May 13th, our family gathers at this gravesite to hold hands and tell Dustin stories. I stop about once a month to add current family events into his plastic jar attached to his stone and walk to my parents and belatedly thank my father and apologize to my mother and say I will work to make her proud. In some measuring sticks, this is not much, but in another, it is everything. I am 76 now. In a not too distant future, I will be placed there. In a world short of respect, maybe we can honor this commitment to the dead and their loved ones. Any questions at this point? No, I know.
Mr. Macy?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Commissioner Burschauer. I just wanted to let you know that we have received all of those letters, and so the commissioners have read them.
We're done reading.
Yeah, so if you choose to read them, that's up to you.
No,
but
they're
I just
done.
okay.
I'm done
Okay,
with it.
thank you.
But I felt these folks wrote these letters. We asked them if to do so. We called them, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't tell them what to write. And I think that it's the honorable thing to do to let them speak out to the public as of now. So I know you have the letters. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
I'm going to make some final comments now. The town report states that the contemplated use of the proposed town project will have a negligible effect on Evergreen Memorial Park. That is simply not true. Here's a definition of negligible. Something so small, so insignificant, and so unimportant that is not worth mentioning. This is in their report. We feel the impact of the light industrial zone is worth mentioning. The impact on our cemetery would be considerable. The town report states that the development area is ideal for deliveries of bulky equipment. Now, this is their last, when they were talking about the it being a farm store and warehouse. The town report states that the development of the area is ideal for deliveries of bulky equipment and goods by large vehicles and trailers. That's quoted out of their report. This means to me large diesel trucks with loud engine noise, loading and unloading, piercing backup alarms, intercom noise, shift change buzzers, other industrial noises that I don't even know about at this time, and perhaps odors. Don't you think that the letters submitted by people who visit Evergreen are worth mentioning? I'm sure you would not place the town project next to a county park. I don't think there are any county parks with industrial developments around them. And I believe that this has a noise. What is the noise thing there, Corey? When we talked about the quiet area. The quiet area means any land or facility designated by the commission as an appropriate area where the qualities of serenity, tranquility, and quiet are of extraordinary significance and serve as an important public need. That's Evergreen Cemetery. That's not necessarily what a park is. Park would be, what's the next? So what I'm saying is that, and you would not put this next to a church. That's another quiet area, as determined in the town report. I am sure you would not place, the development would also be impaired visually by large trucks and trailers and other industrial equipment and a warehouse that could be, at least from that map, I measured as 250 by 100 by 45 feet high, blocking the skyline. Might show where that is going to be. That in that area there going east. That's where the warehouse, huge warehouse sticking up. As we have shown property owners that the cemetery expect to be in a quiet, beautiful, and serene place. Families to place respect to their loved ones in a peaceful and comforting environment. Thousands of people are laid to rest at Evergreen Memorial Park Cemetery. Men, women, children, leaders, homemakers, veterans, farmers, merchants, and working men and women who make this country what it is. Their county what it is. They don't deserve this zone change. Contrary to the town report, this project would have a very negative impact on the property owners at Evergreen Memorial Park. Therefore, the requirements of 1208.02 are not being made by this project. I'm going to go back to sum it up pretty quick here, and let's go back to a quote by Jim Hurl. Now, Jim Hurl's a person that is a man who doesn't mince words when he talks to people. Would you agree to me on that? So I'll just read what he has to say. It's to the point. The proposed light industrial park next to a long time and well thought out cemetery doesn't seem appropriate to me. It would take away the solitude that you have with your departed loved ones. I, as a longtime county resident, am strongly opposed to this idea and request to rezone this property. And of course, we've talked to people, we've talked about the, any questions at all from anybody?
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Macy?
No, Chair.
No, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Macy.
Thank you. Mr. Macy and Mr. Rich, does that conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to other testimony in opposition of the application. Is anyone joining us that would also like to testify in opposition? Not seeing any hands up. Let me know if you guys see differently. No? Okay. Okay, and that brings us to public agency reports.
Thank you, Chair. The Planning Department received comments from 2 public agencies. The county sanitarian stated that future development must meet the sanitation requirements. The McMinnville Fire Department submitted 2 separate comments, which noted that first, there are no fire hydrants in this area. Before construction of a light hazard industrial complex begins, the developer should provide plans for the improvement of the water infrastructure at the site. And secondly, that all fire department access and water supply must be met and all current fire codes must be followed, determined upon occupancy type and type of construction. Typically, these types of improvements and standards are evaluated during a site design review process when a specific use is requested on the property. And this concludes the public agency reports.
Thank you very much, Lance. And do we have a rebuttal by the applicant? Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Elaine Albridge again for the record on behalf of the applicant. A few things for rebuttal. I do want to address a couple of points that were raised in the oral testimony, but then just as a matter of proceeding, I would like to request that we do a 7, 7, and 7, such that we could leave the record open for 7 days or however long the board would like for a period of time, and then allow for new evidence to go into the record, rebuttal evidence to go into the record, and then allow applicant the opportunity for final legal written argument before the board deliberates. I think in particular, our team wants to make sure we can supplement the record a bit in response to Commissioner Cola's questions about the economic needs and the site. So we want to make sure that's addressed fully and include some arguments in response to how the application of the zoning change approval criteria work versus the site design review process standards to help navigate that and what the actuals, what 120802C requires when looking at appropriateness of the zone change versus the compatibility of the development in the future. So I think we can expand on that a bit in a supplemental filing. But just to address this quiet area, what Mr. Was being referenced was the Oregon DEQ noise regulations. Those are found in OAR 340 Division 035. Those are the state noise regulations, and quiet area is a defined terms like noise sensitive property. Those are two terms used to identify areas where noise is evaluated differently depending on the source. But what wasn't mentioned in the reading of the quiet area was the type of enumerated areas that are included in this definition. And quiet areas include wilderness areas, national parks, state parks, game reserves, wildlife breeding areas. There's no mention of parks, of cemetery parks or anything like that. It's more focused on the wilderness areas. So I can address that a little bit more in my supplemental response also, but the quiet areas must be designated by the Oregon Environmental Council, and that hasn't happened in this case, or that we have no evidence of a cemetery or this cemetery being designated as a quiet area. So I think that should address that particular issue. But otherwise, I will, unless Marie or anyone on the AKS team has any further comments, I think we'll close for today and request that the public hearing be closed and then proceed with a open record rebuttal and final written argument.
Thanks, Elaine. AKS does not have any further comments.
Thank you. So there's a request to keep the record open. Christian, I can't recall, but is that something that we simply agree to, or do we vote for that?
If I could maybe read a suggested schedule, and if the board is amenable to it, then the board can say so moved and then vote on it. The schedule will be, the record shall be left open to 5 p.m. on March 10th, 2022 for all parties to submit written testimony or evidence to the planning department at 525 Northeast 4th Street, McMinnville. The record shall then be open until 5 p.m. on March 17th, 2022 for all parties to submit to the planning department written rebuttal to what was submitted during the first open record period. The record shall then be open for the applicant only to submit final written argument with no new evidence until 5 p.m. on March 24th, 2022. At that point, the record shall be closed. The Board of Commissioners shall then reopen the hearing at 10 a.m. on March 31st on Zoom or in room 32 of the Yamhill County Courthouse at the point of staff recommendation.
Great, thank you, Ken.
Oh,
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. Any further discussion on this? No. Oh, Christian.
Commissioner, I would just ask Ken, does that date on the 31st to reopen it, does that work scheduling wise, or do we have other things on that date already that we should be thinking about?
Which Ken are you asking?
You.
I think
yeah.
you.
Or either of you really, but I was intending to ask you, Mr. Huffer.
I don't believe there's anything on there that would interfere with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Kula to keep the record open. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. The record will be kept open.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will
Yeah,
see
thank
you
you.
on March
Thank you all.
31st.
Great. We'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to come back into formal informal session. And we are at announcements. So just a couple things. Ken was hoping for some clarification on the new kind of in-person meeting date in room 32. And then also if we are planning on providing like a county-wide update on the masking policy and quarantining rules. I know we've had some questions about COVID leave and did that expire and what's going on there. So if you could address a couple of those.
Okay, well, why don't we start first with the meeting dates and resuming in room 32 with the latest updates and based on the discussion that the board and some of the questions that were raised last week about because originally we identified the first Thursday in April, but with the revised timeline, I'm working with staff right now, also working with the DA's office because they've still been using room 32 for grand jury. We're currently working through that, but I believe what we had targeted as a possible return to room 32 would be March 24th if the board's agreeable. That gives us some additional time to make sure we get notices and update our website with that information about what that's going to look like in room 32, and then also still allows us to do some additional testing on the system so I can make sure we're ready to go on, on the 24th.
That sounds great.
Sound good? All right, sounds good.
All right. As far as the other questions, we're still reviewing. We're getting the same late breaking updates about the lifting of the. I saw the OHA release this morning about the lifting of not only the masking requirements but the quarantine and some of those. We're still reviewing that material, so I don't really have anything further as far as information. I'm working with the HR team and they're reviewing that, so I don't really have any more detail I can provide at this time. There are we do have divisions and programs within the county that are still going to have some masking requirements, again, because there's still some requirements for correctional facilities and healthcare settings. And so we're currently working with the Sheriff, Department of Community Justice, and HHS on what that means for those particular areas. So no more information to come on that. And then as far as the administrative leave policy, it was put in place to help with quarantine situations and to help, to ensure that employees that are ordered to quarantine have the ability to do that with the lifting, or what OHA calls the pausing of quarantine requirements and masking requirements. The policy did expire on the 28th. And I'm not sure if there's actually a need moving forward if there's no longer a quarantine requirement that's being imposed. So moving forward, anyone, we would essentially fall back to, again, that's what we have PTO programs and sick leave programs for any types of illnesses that may come up, pre-COVID. So if anybody is employees that are sick or ill or things, they would have the PTO or sick leave program.
Great, thank you, Ken. Commissioners, did you have announcements to add?
Chair, I don't. I must say that I had my head fully into this PAZ, and so the normally prepared announcements are gone amongst everything else.
Understandable. It's a pretty significant case. So, Commissioner Sterritt?
Thank you, Chair. Just interesting and encouraging that the ongoing discussions regarding something that a lot of us have wanted and aspire to is that one-stop shop for families like they have in Polk County, the Family Academy, where folks can come in and access all the services they need for families, for benefits, for childcare, for some of the significant issues that families in crisis might need, and to know that that discussion is ongoing and that there are at least there's movement being made in that regard. So excited about that. And we don't have anything to report as yet, other than it's like a real thing now. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Lincoln County Board of Commissioners. They approved giving us their used bleachers for our fairgrounds, which is a considerable gift considering that they had to purchase new ones, and I think each set is about $75,000. So they are almost $300,000 into their investment for new bleachers. So they approved giving Gary and our fairgrounds their used ones, and so we appreciate that, and they will be put to good use.
That's wonderful news. And I will say that I love the smell of bleachers. I know it's weird, but
okay, Christian, Ken, further updates?
The other item that I had that's just have on the board's radar is we're looking at scheduling a work session for March 24th to have Sarah Architects come back and provide an update on where we're at with strategic capital planning. And so we're looking at scheduling that as a work session because it's more than a presentation. We're also looking to solicit board feedback on where we're at with the planning.
Sounds good. Thank you. Well, if there's nothing more for the good of the order, I will adjourn the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal and informal session for March 3rd, 2022. And we hope you have a sunny weekend. Thank you.
thank you.